Cemetery. I was studying a few of the trees earlier and I thought I'd do a quick walk and talk around, point out some of the trees. So this is the sort of entrance to Exwick Cemetery, and this lovely tree in front here is a white beam, and that's a native tree. And then we've got a striking birch tree, probably a type of Himalayan birch, and then there's also another birch behind it which is probably a type of silver birch. So this will just be a very sort of, hopefully try and cover all of the fantastic cemetery. And it's a beautiful green space, and let's get away from this noisy road. So as soon as you walk into the Exwick Cemetery, you are graced with this avenue of fantastic western red cedars, and that is lovely, isn't it? To be able to still have a decent sized avenue of trees. And then in front you've got the sort of main building on the cemetery. I'll just quickly, if anybody wants to read any of this information, you can review it later, but I'm not focusing too much on this because I need to walk around the actual lovely cemetery and point out some of the really cool trees. So today the weather conditions are, it's rained a little bit, wind is on and off, but overall it's actually not a bad day for December. So this is just fantastic when you can be under this canopy of these trees. Ah, it's lovely, isn't it? It just mesmerises you. Absolutely stunning. But as beautiful as these trees are, must carry on. So I'll try and point out some of the trees on the left side of the cemetery. The tree directly in front, that is a Acalius castanum, which to everyone will be the lovely horse chestnut, which drops the conkers, and that's a really nice tree. And actually quite a lot of the young saplings do actually grow underneath the tree, but although they do grow, quite a lot of squirrels will get to them before they can take root, or also when they mow the grass it might damage the saplings. But like I say, a horse chestnut, and I believe the tree to the left, I believe that's a young sycamore. And you can see I think they've planted a can't really tell that looking at the label, but it's either a young Atlas cedar or a young Cedar of Lebanon. There's a lot of interesting evergreen trees on Exeter Cemetery, and I must admit I don't know all of them. Deciduous trees are my sort of focus of study. I mean, I love all trees, but I just find deciduous trees, for me, with my study, the way it's going, that's been my focus. But once I've covered all of those, I'll be turning my keen eyes to these amazing evergreens on the cemetery. So you can actually see, if I can sort of point it, it looks like a small bush, but that's actually a young redwood, a giant redwood, and it's really good to see a giant redwood when it's really young. So we'll actually quickly walk over there and then we'll carry on with the actual main tour of the cemetery. You can actually see, although that tree was felled or removed many years ago, and you can see fungus at the bottom, that young tree that's taking root is actually a horse chestnut tree. We'll have a look at that in a minute. So I'm just going to carefully walk to this fantastic little, well, a little giant redwood. So giant redwoods, I say, aren't native to this country. Most people know them very well because they're the largest tree by volume on the planet. The tallest tree goes to the coast redwood, but yeah, giant redwoods live up to their name. They will get humongous. And what's really cool is even on this young tree, look at that, these are the female cones, which as they mature will get more woody and then release seeds. And it's great that you can get to see them, because quite often as the trees get bigger, all the female cones and flowers are out of reach or out of sight. But here, I mean, I can, you know, touch all of them, and there's lots on this tree. And as I said, this tree's taller than me now. It wasn't when I was first studying it, so it's growing at a good rate. Seems to be quite happy here. And we shall have a look here, which difficult to tell what type of tree this was. I'd hazard a guess. I believe it was another western red cedar, the left of the trunk, just looking at the remaining bark, and you can see that fungus is now on this tree. But as I said, this is really cool because horse chestnut, this is a young one, and you can see these lovely sticky buds, which it's not going to focus on, which is a little bit annoying, but I don't know if you can see that. I need to focus on a, there we go. I mean, these buds are actually massive on a horse chestnut, which makes them great to study. But like I say, this is just a young one that's probably got moved along by squirrels and other small birds and mammals, and it's, like I say, and assuming it's going to be left to its own devices, this will grow into a nice replacement tree. So hopefully that'll be left to grow, because that'll be nice to have another sort of naturally placed horse chestnut. And then quickly just focusing here, lovely, which I believe is a Cedar of Lebanon, and there's several at the back here. And I'll quickly show you the cones, because again, it's nice that when you get the lower branches, you can actually see cones of these trees and the fruit. So here we go. Look at that, and that's brilliant, because I don't even have to really much effort there. And there you go, the cones, which are actually quite resinous, quite sticky if you do try to touch them, and they're actually really, really hard to get off the tree. Whilst they're in their growing stage, they are like, well, very difficult to remove. But like I say, when it's ready for the tree seeds to be dispersed, they tend to flake away, and you can even see here, this is just the pieces of the cones, and quite often a squirrel will go up there and chew away at all of it, eat all the fleshy seeds, and leave just thousands and thousands of the what's left of the cone. So this is probably squirrels that have caused this. So anyway, that's these lovely cedar trees. Just going to move back onto the path. As I said, at this part of the cemetery, you've actually got a really good grouping of mixed evergreens. And as I said, as my study improves, I will get identification on these fantastic trees. But as I said, for the moment, I want to try and steer my way to the deciduous trees. So we're going to sort of turn back. Now here comes the rain. So again, the fantastic avenue of, oh, little squirrel, it's gone. Western red cedars. There we go again. Fantastic. Right, let's carry on. So another evergreen, a type of fir or spruce, but again I need to actually get some solid ID on there. Can't really get to the cones because unfortunately they're right to the top. So again, you've got more of the cedar trees. So now this is sort of going into the more sort of central part of the cemetery. That small tree there, that looks to be a rowan tree. native species. And here is a London plane, which you can tell by the sort of camouflage army patchy bark, very similar to sycamore bark, but I think it has more mixed colours, making it look more like a army camouflage. And if you look carefully on the edges of the branches, you might see those small little dangling, they look like golf balls, but they are technically the fruits of the tree, and they'll disperse into many seeds. So that's a London plane. This one is a lovely lime tree, and you can tell it's a lime tree straight away. You can see those little hanging bracts, and those like clusters of 3 to 5 small tiny balls that hang on. I mean, during the summer, this will be covered in lovely small flowers, and bees go mad for them. And then, like I say, when they grow and develop into these kind of interesting little seeds, they get dispersed by the wind. This appears to be a silver lime. There's different types of lime, but this one I've identified as a silver lime. Lovely tree. Again, you can see straight away that striking white tree stands out. A type of birch without any type of detailed study. Probably a type of Himalayan birch, but there's so many cultivars, birches can be tricky to get a solid idea on. Again, some fantastic evergreens behind us. I mean, these trees are big. That's what I love about this cemetery. The trees are a really good size, making study an absolute pleasure. And this small tree in front is a magnolia, which was planted well, a couple of years ago, I think. I believe it was a Galaxy, I think was the cultivar. Lovely pink flowers from memory. And it flowered almost within the first year that they put it down. So I'm going to try to go all the way around and cut through the middle because there's just so much ground to cover. But I'll quickly point out that tree there is a hornbeam, which is a native tree. Again, I'm not going to focus too much on the evergreens, so we'll carry on this path. You still see a few leaves hanging on. So what's interesting, you can see those 2 large trees that have got thousands of branches. So those are a pair of lime trees. I would hazard a guess your standard common lime, because there's quite a lot of suckering at the bottom. But I imagine because behind them you can already see that DPT van. There's a pavement and therefore a road. I imagine they have reduced the size of the trees to reduce liability, because lime trees get big. They will branch out. So they've probably literally just done a huge reduction, and lime trees actually recover really well from this, which is why you've got this extreme, all these recovery shoots coming up, and that's quite ecologist for maintaining it. But again, my understanding is 2 large trees there right by a public pavement. The council ground owner probably worked together to get those cut back, and they'll actually just almost look like very big lollipop trees come the summer. And this lovely tree here is a tulip tree, which we'll have a closer look. Tulip trees get pretty tall as well. Not native, but quite widely planted in the UK. Fantastic trees for their lovely yellow flowers, fantastic leaves. And here, this is good. You can see very distinct. I don't know how you can describe those buds because they're such odd shapes, but I'll let you decide on that. But they're quite flat when you look at them sideways on. If it's going to focus on there, no, it's not going to. They are, if I can get the angle, they're a bit flat and pressed. But this is how once the flower turns into its fruit, it then disperses these cool, papery little... I mean, they're actually sometimes used in like dry flower arranging, but they do literally fall apart later on. They won't stay together. But like I say, that's the fruiting part of a tulip tree and a few of the buds. And then you can see the twig and the leaf scar. So that's a tulip tree. And then I think what you'll find here, you can see another London plane directly in front. Again, another, well, that's the birch we pointed out earlier. So we'll quickly filter back. So we'll get back on our track. This is going to take quite a while actually, because there's a lot of ground to cover. So the tree here, which you can see leafless, deciduous, that's a purple leaf plum. Lovely purple leaves, and then equally interesting sort of purple flowers, or white to purple flowers. And then this is another purple leaf plum, and this tree I've studied a lot. And these are lovely trees because they are sort of small to medium trees, and they do actually produce fruit that the plums of this variety, they are actually edible, but I don't believe they're widely eaten. Again, I don't know what the preparation would be, but yeah, purple leaf plum. And you've got these really fascinating characteristics. Oh, look, there's a fly that's just... Isn't that amazing? End of December and still got insects. Got to be careful, there's plenty of webs there. And also you can quickly have a look that unfortunately, I'm not sure when this happened. It actually happened before my initial study of this tree. A huge bough, sort of segment of this tree is missing. I'm assuming that was down to storm damage. I didn't notice any disease in this section, but as I said, it happened a while ago. But the tree has sort of, as best as it can, sealed up any wound. Seems to be okay for the moment. Not this one, unfortunately. This is its friendly purple leaf plum next to it, which that was felled a couple of years ago. So if we step back, you'll see what they did, which is again good planting and planning. They had two purple leaf plums so that you had like an archway. Again, during the summer would have been beautiful, but from what I was told, it was diseased. So they, as you can see, that's the remainders of it. But yeah, purple leaf plum, very pretty small little tree. Now unfortunately here, this used to be a copper beech. Copper beech are, again, they get pretty big, 30 to 40 metres. You can see all this lovely fungus, a mixture there, it's like a bit of turkey tail. It's got quite a particular smell around this tree, all the fruiting spores. But yeah, this was, and I did study this briefly when it was still a tree. But again, they unfortunately with beech trees, they are prone, and they're shallow rooted. But there's certain types of fungus that will weaken the root structure, and having shallow roots puts them at greater risk. So during like the high winds, which is typically sort of like winter, maybe early spring, you get wind throw, and then again, if you have a tree as big as this fall over, that could wipe out a house. So again, I'm assuming that they must have had it checked out. But yeah, it was a lovely tree when it was here, still providing lots of biodiversity. So it's nice that they haven't ground the stump up immediately. They've let it provide a home and food source for many critters. And that's another copper beech. So again, the planting was done very tactfully. But right behind, so if we sort of go down here, so they probably planted these two at the same time, I'd imagine. So that huge tree And this was a big tree, I remember it. So we'll quickly walk up to this copper beech. And beech is my favourite native deciduous tree, but again, copper beech is technically not classed as a native tree of the UK. It's because it's technically a sort of nuisance tree. It doesn't categorise as being truly native. But interestingly, I tend to find more copper beech trees than common beech, and you can clearly see that characteristic zigzag bud. You might be able to see it more if I focus on here, focus on that. It won't do it. But you've got these characteristic zigzag buds, lovely smooth grey bark of beech trees. And this is a really good one. I love it. Imagine all that life in that tree, on the tree, in the tree, under the tree. And we've got flipping developers knocking them all down just to put more crappy houses up. One other thing that's really cool, and you might notice that you tend to find this more on younger beech trees and beech hedges. Let's see if I can find one. This is better. So it's the end of December, and you can see we've got leaves still. You know, they're not being sent any nutrients to keep them alive, or not, at least not green. Over 90% of the tree shed its leaves, but yeah, beech trees, oak and hornbeam sometimes retain a small amount of leaves, and they call that marcescence, or the other name for it is marcescent, which just means it retains its essentially what it would normally shed during the cold season. And you can see the ground is littered with the rest of the leaves, but fascinating how we're still not 100% sure why they do this. There's lots of theories like energy preservation and defense mechanisms, but I think sometimes people overlook that trees are a lot more complicated not in a bad way, but we just don't understand them as much as we should understand them, because the research is very, I'll be honest, almost sort of 18th century in my opinion. It's like we know that trees communicate underground through various networks, and we're only just beginning to scratch the surface of that. But you know, trees do, if you look at a lot of the when you're studying leaves, you'll actually leave tiny, small, almost bubbles, which on some trees really stand out, and they're like leaf glands, which help with, you know, the growth and the production of the tree. But just like with humans, we know and understand that there's different types of glands in the human body, and they do all sorts of cool and fascinating things. But what's to say that trees don't go through and behave like humans do, and go through, you know, from going from a child through teenage and all the growth spurts and different things, like, you know, when teenagers grow up, they often get acne and mood swings. Well, who's to say that in younger trees, marcescence isn't that? I mean, it's just me throwing out some silly ideas out there, but I just think that there's so much more to trees, young and old. And it would be fantastic when we really fully understand them and finally appreciate them. Anyway, I've got to move on. So as I said, fantastic copper beech tree here. We've talked about marcescence. So what we'll do now, I think we'll move up, sorry. And I'll quickly point out that these two trees here, they are also copper beech trees. So they've planted a good amount of beech trees. to cover the laburnum as well. But so here we go. We've got an ash tree, but this one is a slightly different species of ash. This is a narrow-leaved ash, and if we can get to some of the buds, look at that. Even better, look at that. You can just about see it's just beginning to release. Well, yeah, it is. They're just about to release the flowers. So ash trees flower, well, I wouldn't, not in December, but they're getting ready to, as you can see. But this one isn't a native ash of the UK. So this is narrow-leaved ash, but really pretty. And certain cultivars have really striking leaves, like the Raywood. But yeah, this is good to see. So give it a month or so, all of these buds will be broken, and you get these really cool deep purple little flowers. And typically ash is usually dioecious, so usually all male or all female trees, but occasionally you will get it where they'll be both. Interestingly, in Exeter, all of the narrow-leaved ash I've come across appear to be all male, because none of them have developed the winged keys, the samaras, which that would mean it's the, they're the female parts of the tree. This ash, you can actually see a segment of its like mid-crown. Now I'm not sure